Hello, everyone. My name is Dean Chandler. Let me check my script, make sure that's right. Yes, my name is Dean Chandler. Welcome to the second of TVP Talks webinars, which is a series of Zoom-based and hopefully live-based conversations with experts in the CTV OTT programmatic space. That each time we come together will be a different topic. Ideally, our first topic was breaking into the CTV OTT space and how to monetize CTV OTT streaming fast smart TV content. Just a little bit about us. TheViewPoint, which is what TVP is short for, is a SaaS company that we help publishers monetize their CTV and OTT inventory. We work closely with publishers to make sure we streamline those paths from their available inventory across their full episode programming, their short format programming, other make sure that they yield maximum revenue with the best possible advertisers. This particular TVP Talk webinar is going to discuss path optimization. Whether it be on the supply side, supply path optimization, demand path optimization. And so there's two sides to that coin, right? There is the supply path optimization, which is what the demand partners, the DSPs, the ATDs, the brands are most focused on. They want their brand to get from, and their client to get from point A to point B to show to the right client or the right customers as quickly as possible. And the inverse of that, obviously, is from the supply side, the publishers of the world in the CTV OTT space that are looking for the most optimized, most assured way, the cleanest way, if you will, to show this content that they've worked so hard to create, develop, and attract. To get the right brands for the best price to come to them and show their wares. So to cover off on those bases, we actually have three experts. We have the demand side expert, who is Cadi Jones, who is the EMEA commercial director for Beeswax. If you don't know who Beeswax is, I recommend that you go into another line of work. Beeswax is one of the premier demand side platforms, an ad tech platform that enables sophisticated buyers to maximize commercial upsides gained from a programmatic buying platform. Her role includes managing the team responsible for the company's expanding growth in the EMEA region. Also joining me from the supply side is Ian Donnelly, the ad operations manager for Cinedigm Networks. He's got an incredible history in the space. Cinedigm is a company that's been leading the digital transformation of the entertainment industry for over 20 years. Cinedigm entertains hundreds of millions of consumers around the globe by providing premium content and streaming channels, as well as technology services to the world's largest media, technology, and retail companies. And sitting in the middle, metaphorically at least, is my colleague Daniel Elad, our Chief Strategy Officer here at TheViewPoint. TheViewPoint being the monetization platform that helps publishers connect directly to demand side buyers. Daniel's passionate about ad tech. I can attest to that. He's innovations in the space, creative transformations of digital advertising ecosystems. What's important here is that if you want to think of this group that we were talking to and where they lay in the ecosystem, Cadi's demand side elements here, and Ian and the publisher here, and our job in the middle at TheViewPoint is to connect the best partnerships to give them a clean path to optimize both their content and the demand that is filling it. So real quick, just a sort of a top line sense of what supply path optimization and demand path optimization is. They are two TLAs. I'm going to attribute that to Cadi, as I told her. TLA is a 3-letter acronym, along with CTV, OTT, DSP, SSP. We decided to throw in SPO and DPO into this. So essentially, what is path optimization? Path optimization as I've alluded to or touched on a couple times already, is how do you get the quickest, most efficient path for my messaging to the people that I want to receive that message, and vice versa. So to help us with a little context there and to get started with my group, my team here, Cadi, I'm going to turn to you first to sort of help us understand how we got here. You being from the demand side, can you just sort of lend us a context of sort of where we started and how we got here to need sort of SPO and DPO?
Sure, Dean. I won't take offense. I won't think you're trying to make me sound old. But if we turn back the clocks to, I guess,
6 months.
No, I'm thinking like 10 years or so, when we're thinking about the sort of beginnings of programmatic becoming mainstream, right? We're moving out of exchange-based buying and into actual programmatic, and thinking about the difference being separate platforms rather than everything happening within one single exchange environment. Well, initially, a publisher would work with just a single exchange or SSP, and then obviously multiple SSPs came along, all promising different things. And most publishers coming into that sort of 10 years ago, 2011, would have their SSPs like set up in a waterfall based relationship. So you'd have your favorite one in first, who got first look, and then right, Ian, and then you would filter down to the second SSPs. Some publishers might have even had 3, maybe. I think I've heard of 4, but 2 or 3 was certainly quite normal, and that was a setup for a while. So as a DSP in that period, you really just wanted to be ideally connected to the first look SSP, unless you were really trying to get cheapest inventory, and maybe then you wouldn't mind if you were further down the waterfall. What really changed was 2015 really came around, and header bidding kind of gained mainstream adoption. Header bidding meant that each DSP, or each publisher, instead of working with their SSPs in a waterfall perspective, was able to work with them all kind of on an equal standing. And so then as a DSP, suddenly we start seeing, instead of, for one ad call, right, for one user opening a page on a website, and I'm not going for CTV to start with, we'll start just with simple display. Every time you've got this ad call coming, as a DSP, you're seeing that somewhere between 5 and 10 times over, depending on how many SSPs a publisher had within their header tag. And that creates a huge amount of cost for a DSP, right? Our processing power is based on the volume of bid requests coming in and our ability to monetize them. Beeswax aside, most DSPs are only paid if they are executing the transaction. They take a percentage of the media that they're spending. And so if you're seeing the same impression 10 times, there can only be one winner. Only one ad can actually serve in that space. So the volume of spend generated doesn't go up, but the volume of the cost does, really quite dramatically. And so it's really from that arrival of header bidding that you got people talking about 2 big things. The first one that got all the sort of focus and attention initially was that switch over to first price auctions and moving away from second price. But the kind of the hidden sleeper was supply path optimization, right? If you're a DSP, most DSPs have some kind of decisioning process whereby they will prefer to access supply from a certain channel. And so you started to see the majority, particularly the legacy DSPs, taking that decision on behalf of their customers. I want to buy this publisher through this SSP. And more recently than that, you've started to get marketers and agencies, so large-scale programmatic buyers, suddenly starting to think, actually, maybe this is something that we should have control on ourselves. Maybe we actually want to control the path by which our bid reaches a publisher. And it's all around, a big thing about that is really making sure that the bulk of your money, or as much as possible, is going on working media.
Right.
Does that help in terms of kind of big, meaty context?
Sure. No, I mean, I love big, meaty context, especially to start with, right? Then we can break it off and eat it. Thank you for that. So now let's swing it over to the publisher's point of view and also the platform's point of view. Ian, so when you're looking at demand path optimization, right? So what does it mean to you? What is, when you think of it, what are the, what does it mean to you? How does it manifest itself, if you will?
Yeah, of course.
Why is it important?
I think, even though this process, as Cadi mentioned, has been around for years now, in terms of getting ads to the end user, we're still kind of like a very relatively new piece of technology when it comes to header bidding, when it comes to the tags that we use to get there. A lot of people are still on traditional broadcast. Traditional broadcast doesn't have the technical implications that header bidding and VAST tags and programmatic bidding have for the end user. So when I think of demand path optimization from a supply point of view, I think it really comes down to two things. One is like the user experience. If you don't have your path optimization down, it can lead to a ton of problems that comes down to, if it's not optimized for the end user, the bidders don't know what they're going to be bidding on. They don't want that inventory. So then the ads don't show up. And from a user perspective, you're only getting either house ads or the, underlays of the stream that play if, no ads are playing and you're getting the same ad over and over again. It's not a great experience for the user. I think anybody who's worked in the supply side space knows that if a user gets hit with the same ad over and over again, that's churn bait right there. People will just drop out of the stream, especially in linear environments. Speaking of linear environments, that brings me to my second point of optimization, is that the technology is very new, these processes are very new, and our endpoints are very different. These processes function both for linear spaces and VOD spaces, two very different environments, CTV, OTV, mobile. I mean, all of these spaces that we deliver to are very different in what they need technology. They're very different in what they need from the type of ads that's playing, the CPMs that are applied, and then you're pulling from different places, whether it come from a VAST tag or a header bidding. It's really important that you optimize these demand paths. Otherwise, you're not able to adequately monetize the content that you're putting in front of users. And at the end of the day, everybody loves free content, but if we're not actually able to monetize that effectively, then these are, just lost revenue opportunities for us as publishers. So it's very important that like the DSPs, the SSPs, everybody along the supply chain, when it comes from advertiser to end user, has a path that's as simple as possible, that's as fast as possible, that's as effective as possible, especially in a programmatic space, to get ad pods filled, to get ads in front of the end user, and to make sure that the advertiser is comfortable with where they're sending their ad. They don't feel like there's any arbitrage or fraud happening. They don't feel like they're having to send the same ad 100 times to the same user, and that the user feels like they're not getting hit with the same ad, or every single ad on this stream is just a house ad. These paths are very important for us to be able to mimic that traditional television broadcast experience in the digital space.
Fantastic. And so picking up on sort of what Ian led to, right? The responsibility, Daniel, of both the supply side of it and the demand side of it to sort of target the right things and accept the right things as a monetization platform, as a programmatic platform, as the pipes. What is it to you? What does path optimization look like? How do we, the viewpoint, or how should the industry do best practices to make sure that everyone's winning here, right? Because that's what we're talking about, is efficiently winning. So
I would use, if I were to choose like one word, especially with CTV, would be uncertainty, right? Programmatic by its nature introduce some level of uncertainty, especially you have the linear traditional broadcaster. They're used to getting X amount of budget on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, upfront deals, right? And then what the hell is all this open RTB thing, right? Right. So we're basically DPO definitely helps a lot getting closer to the client, understanding the budget, right? The RFPs, the flight dates, what's the CPM, right? So it's definitely helps a lot with that. And that's why we're seeing most of the transactions right now with CTV definitely floating through those, PNP, deal IDs, programmatic guarantees. And
Right.
that's why DPO is so important. Another point is definitely insights, right? So who is buying my inventory? I want to understand better which DSPs, the brands, is it mostly CPGs, the automotive, right? And then how am I using those insights to my benefits, right? And especially what Ian just mentioned, like improving the advertising experience by avoiding repetitive ads, right? Avoiding oversaturating the user and showing relevant ads and preventing unwanted brands or categories. And all those things are much easier to control when it's not just an open auction, or when you actually know that, hey, I have a deal with DSPs or with these brands or these agencies. So you can control that, and you have set of tools on your SSP that you can go ahead and block that because you see the pipes.
Right.
And then it also very much helps with evaluating the SSPs, right? That provide me with the best tools and the most efficiency or efficient path to demand.
Right. Well, you said something. Thanks. You said something really. You said programmatic is, equals uncertainty, right? And I think also programmatic, just to expand on that a little bit, to me is it's programmatic means the ability not to trust, right? And so if you can, and signals and signs of trust are programmatic guarantee campaigns or programmatic guarantee deals and direct connections, right? To show a trust that both sides and both parties are working towards a common goal. And so that's interesting. If they're in supply path and demand path optimization, or just path optimization, is sort of a yearning for and a striving for trusting each other, right? Cadi, as a media buyer, from the media buyer side, when you're wanting to do this path optimization, where do you start? Where do you want to start? Trying to audit or improve their SPO. I know there's specific goals that you can sort of, or KPIs that you sort of attach to it as you
let's
try to clean it up.
Well, definitely, and yes. So let's break that into two sections. So in terms
Sure.
of the how and what you can do, you're really looking at the log level data that you can get back from your DSP partner. The two sort of, obviously there's lots of different log files that different platforms make available. The two ones that are really crucial for supply path optimization, you really got to think about your win logs and your bid logs. So your bid logs, if you're working with a platform who you think is doing SPO for you, you can use the bid logs to look at and really understand how that platform is routing your demand. If you're working with a DSP such as Beeswax, which doesn't do this on your behalf, the bid logs are going to be perhaps less interesting, although it can still give some interesting detail. But actually looking at the win logs, where you see the same publisher from multiple different sources, you can start to see and really analyze where are you winning more often and where are you winning more frequently. And I think if you can look at those two pieces together, you can then start to understand, what is the most efficient route to the supply that you want to get. But it's not easy, right? So if you are serving, I don't know, just pick a number, like 5 million impressions a day, and you have a 5% win rate, that means you're bidding on 100 million bid requests. So in terms of the analytics, and I picked a small number at 5 million impressions, right? So if you're talking about needing to have a team who is doing a lot of that analysis, who's comfortable with, millions and millions of rows of data, assuming actually maybe at a scale bigger than that, it's going to increase exponentially. And so there are, sometimes our customers are doing it for themselves. Sometimes they're working with third parties to sort of help with some of that, but it's not necessarily easy, or conceptually it's easy,
Right.
but it is big bits of data. Dean, I think
Right.
the second thing you asked about was really the goals, right? So we talked a little bit about kind of efficiency. Last summer, I think the equivalent to like the US ANA, they're called ISBA in the UK, and they represent advertisers here. Mm-hmm. They ran a study together with PwC where they analyzed a ton of programmatic transactions to really dig into sort of transparency through the supply chain. Their findings was that the SSP take rates varied between around 6% and 25%. And so if you think about cost efficiency can be a really, really significant differentiator, particularly when you're then coming into CTV and you're looking at like, the inventory is not cheap, let's put it that way, right? Right. The difference between 6% and 25% can be really quite a significant chunk of your budget. I think there are other goals that we see customers kind of really focusing on when they're thinking about supply path optimization. It can be around sort of the quality of the traffic that they're accessing. Mm-hmm. For example, brand safety. It's much more common in environments where there's still a waterfall kind of set up in place, particularly in mobile. And then even for unique reach can be a thing. If the DSP partner that you're working with is throttling the bid requests through certain supply sources, that's potentially harming the total reach number of your campaign. They may be blocking you access to certain pools of supply. And so there can be multiple goals, but generally the kind of the first one that people are looking at is that cost efficiency piece. Right.
Perfect. And that research, 6 to 25% rev share that most SSPs are taking is pretty phenomenal. For the record, TheViewPoint actually is a SaaS model where we only take a flat CPM. I have to plug that, and it's far below any 25%. So from creating a shortcut between supply and demand is what DPO looks at the most, right? So specifically speaking programmatically, it's about sellers helping buyers to win more auctions for their impressions, right? So Ian, what demand path optimization steps should or could CTV publishers take to gain more control? Like there's on the SPO side audit and you sort of figure out what's working best. For publishers, what do you recommend for yourself? What have you guys done? Something along those lines.
Well, the number one tool that we all have on our disposal is data. I'm a huge proponent of data and reporting, and we get to see who's performing well, who's hitting those thresholds between the 6 and 25, who's exceeding, who's going under. And, as you mentioned before, this is kind of a zero-sum game where, everybody here succeeds on the backs of everybody else. It's a circle of just success, which is what I love about working in ad operations. But when you have the reporting, you have the data, you have the ability to reach out to partners and say, what's going on with our inventory that maybe you're not bidding so much, or hey, we noticed that you've increased your bid rate, and your win rate a lot in the past month. Is there something happening there? We have the ability to communicate. We have the data to back these things up. We have the ability to troubleshoot based on the data of saying you're winning a lot, but your impressions aren't rendering to the end user. So you're getting everything you need, but you're not making it there. What's the breakdown? What's the problems? What's happening to stop this from being a successful partnership? Right. I think the data and the reporting is like the number one tool that we really have to troubleshoot these issues and really make sure that the optimization is there to make sure that people are getting their ads.
Yeah, I mean, that's critical. Thank you. Daniel, so what's sort of the same question to you? What sort of steps, and what should these publishers be looking for CTV space to help, enhance? I don't want to say optimize over and over again because we can make a drinking game out of it, but what is what are these steps that these platforms can help publishers with, or what publishers should be looking for?
and I'll try not to repeat too much of what Ian just said. There's two things, right? First of all, we need to keep in mind that the CTV is a new evolving ecosystem, right? So optimization is for an existing process that you want to optimize and make better. We have publishers that are switching from SVOD enabled. We are the first SSP they're ever working with to monetize their inventory. So we're trying to show them how to do it in the right way versus, a VMVPD is working already for like 10 years and they know exactly what they're doing. So the strategy is definitely not the same. And not everyone has an Eon on their team. Some others are just up and coming, right? So they have like a smaller number of people that are actually dealing with programmatic. So I wouldn't suggest maybe necessarily going through all the steps right away, but definitely you want to make sure which the SSPs you're choosing. What's the pricing model, right? And like running analysis, right? And definitely robust reportings. Can I really see what type of inventory demand partners are interested? Mostly some operating system are obviously more appealing than others. And then who are buying, which are the DSPs, which are the buyers that are interested in my inventory, and maybe I want to reach out and set up deals, right? What we do in the Viewpoint, we have, of course, our DSP concierge service, right? Which we proactively helping them to set up deals, and they can actually do deals in their accounts, right? So maybe they're not there yet, maybe they're already there and they say, I want to just use your technology and we're going to go ahead and set it up, right? Yep. And then, yeah, so all these sort of things that definitely to begin with I think are good kind of like steps. But then I think that you always need to kind of like at some point say, hey, maybe we can just go ahead and reach out to the agencies, right? We already have substantial amount of inventory or we acquire more knowledge with time. So yeah, that's pretty much it about it.
And this is we're short on time here, so I'm just going to go to one more question, maybe two. And this is for everyone, but we'll just go backwards and go with Daniel first. In your mind, what are the most common roadblocks when applying SPO and DPO practices? What are the concerns? What are the what are the challenges to make these things happen, make these recommendations happen?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely what you just mentioned, right? So it's really, do I have enough knowledge and do I have enough people on my team to actually go out and proactively reach out and to set up those deals and to analyze? Because at the end of the day, even if you have all the tools, you need to have someone proactively use these tools and analyze and go and reach out to the DSPs and set it up and reach out to the agency and set up the deals, right? So it can take some time sometimes, and then of course also you need to make sure that the agencies and everyone on the demand side are also aligned with an SPO, right? Maybe like we're just buying from our DSPs and their traders, they do their thing, right? So every agency also works completely differently. From our conversation, we are in touch with all the big powerhouses. Everyone is at different stage, right? So you want to understand who is already implementing SPO on their end, right? So they're willing more to connect through direct pipes, through deal IDs and PGs and so on. Yeah, and again, the strategy that you want to set and kind of like, maybe every 6 months you want to check that and go back and say, okay, now maybe we can reach out to additional bulk of buyers.
Thanks. Can I jump in and just ask, because I think there's one thing that I think you kind of really touched on, but we didn't go into much detail on, but I think this is, one of the reasons I'm so pleased that this is the topic today, but I think just people like even knowing it's a problem and knowing that there's something you can do about it is probably I know it's a weird sort of, it's not really a roadblock, but I feel like it's
no, but it is, right?
It's something that people don't often give much time to. It's quite normal that, and I'm sure the same happens to you from the sell side, Ian, but on the buy side, quite often when we're talking to a new potential customer, they'll be spending north of 70% of their budget via one SSP. And it's mind-boggling to me that that for a huge number of people, they haven't yet even started to consider why that is, and could they, and what could they do about it. So I think there's I think it's almost like the knowing it's a problem before you kind of get into any of the bigger roadblocks. Daniel, is that something you've seen as well?
I would, it's the absolute spot on. And I would add another thing. with CTV, if we're talking about all the acronyms, right, it can be very overwhelming, right? Fast, AVOD, BVOD, TVOD, you name it, right? So SPO and DPO very often just sounds like another fancy acronyms, and they cannot prioritize everything, right? So I think that's why we're doing this webinar, and that's why it's so important to reach out proactively, us as an SSP, to the buyers and explain the path, right? Like we are setting up, for instance, Cinedigm is one of a client, and we're setting up a deal on their behalf, right? We're not sending anything on an open market, right? So it's really important to have those conversations. And I can honestly say that this year the agencies are much more open to that than a year ago. And I think as a rule of thumb, we are at the companies. We're always a bit ahead, right? So we cannot expect the agency to kind of like be at the same page, which is absolutely normal. So yeah, it's a great point.
Ian, following up on that, as a singular publisher in the trenches with this, right? Is one of the roadblocks, do you agree with that sort of concept that it's about knowing and admitting there's a problem and then putting in the work? Is that
totally
right?
I mean, Katie's spot on. I mean, like half the job of ad operations is, again, monitoring the data. Where are these things breaking down? Why is performance changed from here to there? And to Daniel's point, and just to, this being a Viewpoint call, I will say the Viewpoint has been very proactive about, coming to us with, changes that need to be made. And we've, it makes my job easier at Cinedigm managing 1,000 different things at once. It feels like sometimes. It's always been great to have the Viewpoint actually reach out and be proactive and say, hey, we can do some stuff to optimize. So shout out to Karen from the Viewpoint team. She's been fantastic working with me. But to back Katie up, it's understanding where the problem is and what can be done to fix it. And a lot of the times, from the supply side, you don't usually see those problems come through until it takes time, because as you're looking at data, a fluctuation of number from hour to hour doesn't mean anything, but a fluctuation of numbers from week to week all of a sudden starts to point to, hey, maybe something's changed, maybe we can do something different on our side, that there's optimization to be made there. From the supply side, not really touching so much on from what the challenges are on demand. A big pain point for us is just the amount of endpoints that are out there. There are the apps you own. There are the apps you don't own. There's linear. There's VOD. There's platforms that use an ad server. There's platforms that use server-side ad insertion. There's like 100 different ways to deliver an ad to an end user. And from a supply partner, it's very important that we're able to understand how does that path work, and then communicate that to the demand side to say, in this environment, here's how this works. In that environment, here's how that works. So you need to be ready and prepared to optimize, your stack on your end to fill the needs of the user based on where it's going. I think every publisher knows that, there's the apps you own, the apps you don't own, and, every one just functions differently, even in your own owned and operated. Like no two apps function the same, no two user base functions the same. So it's very important to like really understand, that path, that optimization, and then communicate that back to the demand partner who has to take that in and organize themselves to be ready to handle what's coming through.
Fantastic way to finish the group portion of this webinar. Thank you guys for your input. I'm just going to take a couple questions. We are running long on time here, but running short on time, running long and running short on time. And these can be 10-word answers if you want. But question is, number one, who should be responsible for path optimization? Ian, you ended strong. Let's go back to you.
Yeah, it's a team effort. There are things that the demand side needs. There are the things that the supply side needs. There are the things that demand doesn't know. There's things that supply doesn't know. Communication is key in this business. It's really important for everybody to be on the same page with one another, to be asking the right questions, to be looking at the data. It's not one side's responsibility. It's kind of a group effort that we all benefit from. It's a good question, though.
Thanks. Katie, do you have anything to expand on there?
No, I was literally just going to say 100%. Like the whole point of this is that what buyers want is the best path to the supply. What sellers want is the best path to the demand. So, this is really this is one of the very rare scenarios where it just works well for everyone. 100%
Right.
everyone is in it to win it, right?
Exactly.
And there shouldn't be winners and losers, right? Everyone should benefit from this, as Ian said.
And we touched on this one. This one's going to be for you and maybe Daniel. What's the first step for DPO? Where should we start from as a publisher? I'm going to assume that data is a great place to start, right? If we want to figure out best ways for demand path optimization.
Data is always a great place to start.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, okay. Give me the first place you go. What data you look at first to see, hey, is this working?
Is that a question for Daniel or for me?
You first. You're a
Okay.
guest.
Most of the platforms that we use to function as ad servers, and even you can get as granular as going to your SSAI if you have that on your end. The data can come from as far along the food chain as you need it to come from, and usually that's where you can pull two reports from two different places, and the difference in those reports will usually tell you where the problem is.
Fantastic. This last question we actually already went through, which was metrics we need to track if we apply SPO and DPO. Go to your log level data. I think from both sides of the table would be a general recommendation here, right? Cadi, any last thoughts before we wrap this up as the demand side partner here?
I think historically there's been a reticence from some of the legacy DSPs because of the way they're architected to share that data. And so I think it really is looking at those win logs and bid logs that are the secret to unlocking this. And so I think, talk to your partners, and if they're not willing to share that, dig into why.
Dig into the why. Daniel, last licks.
Yeah, I'll take 30 seconds. I always look at enabled business like relying on three main pillars, right? Like user experience, how I'm navigating through the app, is it user friendly, the content, and advertising experience. The first two we have absolutely no control over. That's for Ian's team, back in Cinedigm. But for the advertising experience, that's where DPO and SPO definitely can help. I really highly advise for anyone that has an app on Google or on Android, you can actually go and see the streaming app, and you can see the comments. A lot of that about the actual advertising experience. You can see where it's good and where it's not as good. And DPO will tremendously can help with that. So that's kind of like my last thought on that.
Ian, any parting words? So that you go first in the roundup.
Yeah, I think I just want to reiterate that once again, this is a very, very young, very, very young way to get content to an end user. Very, very young way to advertise, to monetize content. And with young stages of new technology comes pain points, and there's a lot of pain points in the optimization, which is why communication is key for everybody going down the chain from advertiser to end user. But I think that we can all agree that CTV, OTT, that we are in the right spot, that this is rapidly growing year over year, that the technology is only going to get better, and that these conversations that we're having now will lead to, the standards for optimization, the standards for best practices, the standards for getting advertisers and monetizing these streams for, CTV to really come into its prime.
Fantastic. We will leave it at that. I can't thank our panelists enough. Cadi, Ian, Daniel, you guys were fantastic. Thank you for making this thing worthwhile for all the attendees to see, and all the people that are going to watch it in the future. I also, of course, want to thank everyone that attended and took the time to spend 45 minutes with us. I hope it was helpful. I hope you guys learned something. Please look up everyone here. Please look up the videos these panelists have created. They are a wealth of knowledge. You can come at us with any information or any questions you may have after this. Once again, thank you very much to the panel. Thank you to the attendees. Look forward to seeing you at the next TVP Talks, which hopefully will be in the next 2 months. And until then, enjoy the rest of your July. We'll look forward to talking to you soon. Bye, everyone.